Is it possible for ads to hide in your favorite content without you even realizing? Flashing images so quickly that your conscious mind doesn't notice, but for some reason, you realize you're thirsty. This form of hidden brainwashing has people worried, but surely showing ads to people that they aren't aware of isn't legal. Well, actually, that's complicated. And to prove it has been done, here are 5 examples of real-life subliminal ads that I'm going to show you. But first, we need to go back to the 1950s, when a man called James Vicary coined the term subliminal advertising. Subliminal essentially meaning a message you picked up on without actually realizing that you picked up on it. But does that actually work? Can you hide messages in videos that persuade people to feel a certain way? Well, Vicary said you absolutely could, after he conducted an experiment in a movie theater where he flashed the words "drink Coca-Cola" and "eat popcorn" during a screening of the film Picnic. And he claimed that Coca-Cola sales rose by 18.1% and popcorn by over 50%. That had people terrified. People were seriously worried that the Soviets would use subliminals to turn neutral nations against the United States, thereby increasing their power throughout the world. And you have to remember, this was during the Cold War, a time of significant world tension. And so, to test this theory of subliminal advertising, the media would go on to hide messages in their programs that asked people to write in if they'd seen them. Now, while Vicary later admitted that he actually faked the results of his eat popcorn and drink Coca-Cola experiment, the threat of subliminal brainwashing had already taken hold in people's minds. So much so that the Federal Communications Commission in the US, the FCC, said that subliminal advertising was a cause of public concern and that broadcasters should approach the technique cautiously. But that didn't stop companies from doing it.
Husker Du. In Denmark, Husker Du means do you remember? Around the world, Husker Du is more than a game. It's a memory exerciser that's fun for children and adults alike. A great family game that increases your alertness. Each player tries to find matching pictures by removing 2 discs.
Husker Du releasing an ad with quick flashes of the words "get it" didn't go down well with the public, especially as they were mainly shown during kids' programming times. And now I have to level with you. That ad I just showed you was a recreation. And the reason that that was a fake is because the real ad was actually banned after there were multiple complaints made to the FCC, leading the FCC to release a statement saying that the ads were deceptive and contrary to the public interest. But you're right, that was in the 70s. Surely there must be something that's a little bit more current. How about this ad from the Bush v. Gore presidential election in 2000?
Under Clinton-Gore, prescription drug prices have skyrocketed and nothing's been done. George Bush has a plan. And Al Gore? Gore opposed bipartisan reform. He's pushing a big government plan that lets Washington bureaucrats interfere with what your doctors prescribe. The Gore prescription plan, bureaucrats decide. The Bush prescription plan, seniors choose.
Did you notice the word rats flash? No matter where you lie on the political spectrum, that seems pretty tricky. And once called out on it, George Bush claimed it was bizarre and weird, and eventually withdrew the $2.5 million campaign. And that's not the only time that subliminal advertising has been used accidentally. According to the Food Network, the flashing of the McDonald's logo in this TV segment was a complete glitch.
Coming up right now.
And whether that was a glitch or a real attempt at subliminal advertising, it begs the question. Even though the FCC has stated that these kind of ads are deceptive and contrary to the public interest, is it actually illegal? Well, to answer that, it depends on where you are in the world. In the US, there are no federal laws outright banning the use of subliminal advertising, and the power is left up to the regulators like the FCC. But in a press statement from the FCC themselves, they outline that they have no formal rules regarding subliminal techniques and have only issued the one policy statement in 1974 that it's contrary to the public interest. Importantly, policy statements aren't enforceable, and they state it wouldn't be appropriate to fine a person for failure to comply with one. But what's interesting is that the FCC has only ever acted once regarding subliminal messaging, and all they did was admonish or warn the radio station that broadcasted it. And it's not even the advertisers themselves, like McDonald's for example, that actually get targeted. It's always the broadcasters, because they're the ones that actually hold the license with the FCC. So it seems pretty unenforceable, but there is a catch. The Federal Trade Commission may be able to prevent subliminal marketing as it's considered a deceptive practice, but it would need to be proven to be intentional, which is difficult, and also affect commerce. So what's the takeaway? Well, that there's little regulation in the US, and that broadcasters only really risk a warning, or at worst, losing their TV license. But two places that do have stronger laws are Australia and the UK, which is why it was hilarious to come across this blatant example from the Australian Music Awards in 2007.
Missy Higgins on a clear night. And Sarah Blasco, what the sea wants, the sea will have.
In that clip, there are several times where Olay flashes on screen for 1 or 2 frames. But Olay wasn't the only sponsor hidden within the broadcast. KFC, Big Pond, Toyota Yaris, and Chupa Chups all flashed at the audience between transitions. And after that, the Australian Communications and Media Authority came out with a ruling to combat that in the future. A ruling that a 2-frame flash is below the threshold of normal consciousness and therefore banned, but a 3-frame flash is at or above it. Which, as far as I understand, basically translates to there's nothing deceptive about flashing an ad for 3 frames because you had more than enough time to see that. So if that's the case, why don't we see more of it today? I've shown you a handful of examples, but if it isn't heavily regulated in the US, you'd expect there to be subliminal ads flashing up all over the place. The reason they're not is that it just isn't worth it. Our current understanding of the effects of subliminal ads is that they could be influential and might be best when people are already in the mood for a certain product, like being served a Coke ad when you're already thirsty. There just hasn't been enough scientific testing to prove or disprove its effectiveness. I mean, scientists agree that subliminal messages can be received without people being consciously aware of it, but whether or not they can actually impact someone's behavior is still a point of contention. So for brands, implementing subliminal ads only does one thing for certain. It risks significant audience backlash and your brand being covered relentlessly in the media. Thanks for watching.